New Life on Old Battlegrounds by Sara Whitten. The testimony in Ezekiel 37 of the dry bones coming to life is a familiar one for many of us. Recently, the Lord highlighted this text to me in a fresh way that I believe is a very timely encouragement. When the Lord initiates. In the first few verses of Ezekiel 37, it was the Holy Spirit who brought him to the valley of exposed bones. The foundation of this miracle was not the will or idea of Ezekiel, but the Lord. There are times in our journey where the Lord brings us to a place for the purpose of His supernatural plans. Often it's not initially our choice or our idea. It may be washed up or a forgotten dream. It may be something we've never even come across before. Where the supernatural begins. The stage for God's great plans often look like a wilderness at first. God didn't bring Ezekiel to a flourishing garden or an oasis. He brought him to a low and lifeless place, not for the purpose of wanting Ezekiel to experience hardship, but for the purpose of wanting the whole area, Ezekiel included, to witness the miraculous. The New King James Version Cultural Background Study Bible footnote for Ezekiel 37:1 explains that for such a large amount of bones to be left exposed to the elements lends evidence to it being the scene of a major catastrophe. Because none of the bones were given a proper burial, it was likely a battle scene. This had been the site of a battle, most likely a defeat. To have one's bones left exposed to the elements was a curse one would wish on an enemy in that day and culture. Back to our valleys of dry bones. The Lord is taking some of us back to a place where there was a defeat. Maybe for us individually, or maybe for others before us. A battleground that has been forgotten, even a cursed place that hasn't felt full of life in a long time. He's doing it to turn that place of defeat into a miraculous place of new life. This process begins with a good look. The Lord had Ezekiel pass by them all around, and behold, Ezekiel 37:2. Behold how many there were, how much was lost, and how dry they were, how hopeless it was from a human perspective. In my own journey, the Lord has begun His most beautiful works by letting me get to the end of my solutions to see just how impossible it would be all by my power. This isn't to sow hopelessness or fear. Neither of these are from the Lord. It's to prepare us for surrendering to Him in our answer to a question. For Ezekiel, it was, can these bones live? Ezekiel 37:3. For us, the Lord may be asking a different, more specific question about the dry that we are facing. The Lord never asks, can you make this happen? Though that is often where we insert ourselves when facing a similarly impossible situation. He asks, can this happen? With hearts prepared for surrender to Him, we know the answer is yes, but that it will have to be in a way that only the Lord knows. Are you living in an almost victory? Next in the passage came a word. It was a word first given by the Lord, but then was meant to be acted upon and perpetuated by the hearer. What word has God given you over your dry place? What does it look like to speak or to act in accordance with that word? What happened next is interesting. Movement happened for Ezekiel the second he partnered with the word. Creative miracles happened. Bones began rattling and coming together with flesh, sinews, and skin. The bodies, however, were still dead. The word Ezekiel had just been given was that they would live. So it looked like an almost victory. Things started looking better, but it didn't happen. The word didn't come to pass, at least not in its fullness. Maybe that's the place you're in, the almost victory. If so, this biblical testimony tells us we can't stop there. Prophesy to the breath. God then gave him a solution in the form of another word. The first time he told Ezekiel to prophesy to the bones. This time he told him to prophesy to the breath. Ezekiel 37:9. God first had him speak to the bones, the natural physical thing, the dead thing in this case. In our dry places, what does God want us to prophesy to the earthly or dead thing we are facing? What does he speak over what we see? The second piece, the piece that causes the fullness of the word to be fulfilled, was when the Lord gave Ezekiel's word to prophesy to the breath, otherwise translated as spirit. Ezekiel 37:9 through 10. This word for spirit is the same Hebrew word as ruach, Strong's 7307, used for God's creative spirit hovering above the waters in Genesis 1:2, or the Spirit of the Lord that was prophesied to rest on Jesus in Isaiah 11:2. He asked Ezekiel to speak to the spiritual, to speak to what he didn't yet see, to speak to what was alive and moving. What does God want us to speak? To the spiritual, unseen, life giving things that His Spirit is doing behind the scenes? What can we say in agreement with His Spirit or breath? The whole experience Ezekiel had is a picture of what the Lord wants to do for the greater group of Israel. The dry bones the Lord is reviving through your life are a picture and a testimony to the greater world around you about His heart and what He wants to do. Our prophetic words have much more power than just for us. They are life-giving to a community as we walk them out in obedience. So, let the Lord take you to a dry place, to an old battleground. Then ask Him, what do you speak to these dry bones? And what do you declare to the Spirit? Then watch what He will do.